You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the capitalist corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the capitalist corner.
What's up, everybody? Where reason meets reality. That's right. This is the Capitalist Corner. I'm your host, Mark Pellegrino, also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz. Wow, that was crazy, Michael. I had some technical difficulties. My computer wouldn't start up. Here I am on my phone. My phone had issues, but now I got through that. Navigating the boomer world with technology is quite interesting. So, Michael, you've got tons of shows going on.
This is not even difficult technological stuff.
Well, when you're troubleshooting and you're under pressure because the show is supposed to start, it becomes difficult.
Yeah, because
like
you
this.
were late. Because
It's
you
like
arrived
this.
late. Had you arrived
Because
on
I was trying to fix my computer. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. If putting your key into a car door to unlock the car door is very easy to do. When you're being chased by a homicidal maniac with a hatchet, it's a little bit difficult.
This is
Okay?
true. What I don't understand is you say your computer is being charged. Why can't you use your computer while it's being charged?
Don't ask me because it died. And I didn't know that it died until
Mark, that doesn't matter. Once you plug in the charger, it works.
It didn't die. No, mine doesn't. Mine does not. And this isn't a boomer thing. It just does not work.
Okay, it is a boomer thing because you were supposed to get a new laptop like 6 months ago.
No, I can't. I don't have time to do that right now. I don't have time.
Okay, tell me why you don't have time right now to do it.
I'm too busy. And now I'm not even in the country.
Okay.
But anyway, we have a lot of things to discuss, but you're going to have to sort of guide us because I'm on my cell phone.
Something really quickly.
Hold on. My wife is going to explain something.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. So I had to get a new computer last summer and I had an emergency, had to do it. I got to tell you, French keyboards, bit of a nightmare.
She's not even boomer. She's like technology whiz.
Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Of course, you can download the American keyboard, but it's going to have different keys than what you're pressing. So it's fine. I can use it. But I don't think Mark is the guy to get a French
Tracy,
computer.
do you recall when you were last in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
January.
I was January.
Okay.
I was there.
Back then, Mark said he wanted to get a new computer, but he couldn't do it because you were there. But once you left, he was going to get him.
I didn't say that was because she was here.
You said you had to spend time with your wife.
Well, that's true.
What?
That's what you said. You said you had to spend time with your wife.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Go.
Then,
No, that wasn't the reason.
That's what you said.
That was not the reason.
My mind. That's what you said. Literally.
Look, we can't.
God, I lose my mind every day.
Come on. Look, we got to get to the show.
Okay, you're stressing. Do you see what's happening here? You're stressing everybody out.
I do.
Get out of here or I'll smack you. Oops, did I say that out loud? Look,
this is why I live in Paris.
Lord have mercy. All right, let's deal with the issues at hand, man. Let's not deal with the war at home. Let's deal with the war abroad, which is the Iran fiasco, because that's what it's turning into, in my opinion, Michael.
Okay, so the first thing is that they had these negotiations the other days. The other day, not the other days. I just saw the Y and it made me think why. Oh my God.
What's the matter?
Okay, you disappeared.
That's all right, because I have to go to X to make this good.
Okay, look. The other day they had the big negotiation, and there's word coming out from multiple sources. Newsmax was one. I want to say, I don't know. It doesn't matter what the other one was. That the Iranians agreed to halt enrichment for 5 years, but the U.S. said, no, you have to halt enrichment for 20 years. That evidently was the breaking point. So Trump says he doesn't care if they make a deal or not. It's fine if they don't come back. He said it's fine if they don't come back to the negotiating table. We got $5 from Jenna Kleem, who says she loves this. Thank you. Now the thing is, and we talked about this with Jim yesterday. Nobody knows what the hell this guy's doing. I don't think he knows what he's doing. Yesterday, he posted a picture of himself looking like Jesus healing somebody.
I heard about this.
Right. So then they asked him about it, and he says, no. I thought that was me as a doctor working for the Red Cross. So this dude's a lying nut. But anyways, I digress. So he says he doesn't care if they make a deal. This is Johnny Dealmaker, who always says he's the best negotiator, whatever. Now he's saying he doesn't care. But my question for you, Mark, is had they made the deal, if it were true that was on the table, had the Iranians agreed to 20 years, no enrichment, would that have been satisfactory from your perspective?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you say you want Iran, first of all, they claim that they'll make this deal. Why? Because they don't want to deprive the Iranian people of what they can lawfully have, which is a peaceful use of atomic energy. But Michael, again, I don't think the Iranian people necessarily have a right to this given their regime. Their regime is a deadly terrorist regime that seeks hegemony in the Middle East and seeks to has a wartime footing now against pretty much every country in its vicinity, including the United States and Europe. Should it be there? It's unlawfully holding back trade in the Straits of Hormuz, calling everybody else pirates, by the way, for wanting to actually enforce international law and keep trade free. They don't have a right to exist. This regime doesn't have a right to anything. But negotiating with them gives them the moral high ground, as if they do when they don't. So no, I wouldn't negotiate to agree to any nuclear power whatsoever. Zero, zip, nada. But I wouldn't negotiate with them either.
Well, they're talking about going back to the table. We'll see. We will see.
Well, Michael, we've been doing this for 50 freaking years. We always go to the table with them. They're a criminal organization. They're a gang of grifters and killers and torturers of human beings. They're not worth negotiating with. But we always sit to the table with them under the impression that some form of negotiation or diplomacy is going to work with them, and it won't. It never has. It never will.
Okay, well, we've got a $1.99 super sticker from Greg Lewis, and we've got $5 from Robert Naser, who says it's far easier to believe that Trump could be a god than that he could ever be a doctor. Here. So this is from the Dispatch, and I'm just going to read it, and we could talk about it. It says, U.S. Navy blockades Iran. The U.S. imposed a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz on Monday. I thought it was the Straits, but whatever. Strait of Hormuz on Monday, preventing all vessels traveling to or from Iranian ports from using the sea route. President Donald Trump first announced plans for the blockade on Sunday after talks for a peace deal with Iran fell apart. It says, according to Bloomberg, a report on Bloomberg on Monday showed that the military would enforce the blockade through a three-step process: interception, diversion, and capture, though it gave non-Iranian flagged ships and other neutral vessels a window to leave the area. The notice said U.S. forces would permit shipments of humanitarian goods to aid Iranian civilians to safely cross through the Straits of Hormuz. I just don't understand. Like, it just seems like everything being done is half-assed. I don't get, like, the whole... First of all, the straits have to be open. They don't have to be open, whatever. But then you're going to allow some ships to just go through, but then the Iranians aren't going to. But then you're going to allow some ships to bring humanitarian stuff. These are going to have to be inspected. I'm sure nothing nefarious will go on there. It just doesn't. And look, I'm the first to admit I'm not a military expert. I don't understand these things. I understand when somebody contradicts himself over and over, and I understand that when you give red lines and don't cross them, you incentivize people to cross them. And when you went into this negotiating thing talking about totally ending their civilization, and then it turns into, okay, we're not going to eliminate your civilization, but we're only going to allow humanitarian aid in. It just doesn't seem like a good plan to me. What's say?
No, but Mike, this is the result of trying to marry lots of contradictions, like the idea that you can civilize war. No, I'm hearing an echo, just so you know.
You heard my phone. Just keep going.
I'll have to pause until after that, otherwise I'll get confused. I think the main idea here that you can make war civil and nice is part of what it makes us go back and forth like this, because on the one hand we you have to take a hard line with a regime that cannot negotiate, that will not negotiate, and doesn't care what happens to its population. In order to bring you to your knees, it will commit suicide. So we have to deal with
See,
that problem, Michael.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and well, so Akira Felix says Trump didn't come up with the idea of negotiating. These guys have been, that's been a problem for a while. Now everybody negotiates.
Which is what I said.
It's true, but much with Trump. Like people say, well, all politicians lie. Okay, that's fine. Trump is the worst I've ever seen when it comes to lying, and it's not even close, right? So when you say, well, they all negotiate, okay, but not everybody else ridiculed everybody else's inability to negotiate. Not everybody else ridiculed everybody's inability to make a deal. Not everybody else has guaranteed he'd be the deal maker. This guy literally mocked other people for not being able to make a deal with Iran, saying that they were poor deal makers. So
So rather than acknowledge that he's in the same boat as them and cannot make a deal with people who don't want to make a deal, he pretends the deal isn't really important anymore.
Well, that's what he's doing now. So the Iranians are saying that if they blockade the Strait of Hormuz, if Trump does it, America, that they're going to start hitting other ports around the region. What do you think? Is that going to happen, or is that just bluster?
Sure. If they have the capacity to do it, they'll do it, in some way or another. If they're going to do a blockade, they got to keep humanitarian aid out as well. If their intention, as blockades are supposed to, is to starve out the bad guy, then they got to do it. You can't let aid in to feed the bad guy. Sorry. Even though there are innocents there who we all care about, we don't want them to be casualties of war. This is war, Michael, and war is a nasty, nasty business. General Sherman said it's hell, and it is hell, but we're trying to make it not hell anymore, Michael. And that's part of the contradiction that we just can't wed in reality, and that's why we fight these forever wars. We can never fight the enemy until they surrender anymore. That's forbidden.
So both the French and the British have said they're not going to help. The thing is, first of all, Trump has done his best to piss off all the allies. I'm not opposed to leaving NATO, right? I'm not opposed to altering much of this. Like I said, again, I'm not an expert, but I do have my inclinations and whatnot. But it's not helpful when you go around alienating all your allies and then you come in and ask them to help you when you decide to wage a war. And you're like, oh, guys, to come on and help. But then he says they've agreed to help. They say, no, that's not true. I mean, it's all just so goddamn ridiculous.
Yeah, who knows what? I mean, you really don't know what to make of anything Trump says. It's likely that they might have agreed to something after the straits are open, to some type of relationship, economic relationship, but we don't know what the details are. I don't think we'll ever get to the bottom of that. Yeah, Michael, this guy has spent this last part of his administration, the whole year and a half that he's been in office, browbeating Europe economically, using tariffs to leverage them, beating them up economically, beating us up economically as a result as well, and then taking their leaders to task, calling them incompetent, calling them awful. Now, I'm all for Europe defending itself. I'm all for disbanding NATO in a way as you are. It's a Cold War relic. We don't need it anymore. Each country should be responsible for its own safety. We shouldn't be necessarily expending our dollars overseas here to try to protect, the governments of Europe. That's their responsibility to their people. So that part may be right, but you certainly aren't going to win friends and influence people by shattering their economies, demeaning their leaders and their cultures, and then expecting them to step up and become your ally in the middle of a conflict that's very complicated. Not going to happen. But Michael, he's a primacy of consciousness guy, remember? So he doesn't really think about reality. It's only his own feelings that matter.
I'm very I don't know. I don't know how the whole thing is going to turn out. I'm not confident, and I've never been confident. Since this began with Trump at the helm, with it's whatever. I mean, I've said this till I'm blue in the face. You have an unconstitutional war being run by an incompetent, narcissistic megalomaniac. Like, I don't know how people think or thought this would turn out well. Again, I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. I would still oppose it because of the unconstitutionality. Maybe Trump will pull a rabbit out of the hat. I'm not seeing it.
Has he yet?
No.
Has he pulled any rabbits out of any hat anywhere? Maybe
No.
somebody in the audience can tell me, because I don't see the 4D chest. I don't see the high level of negotiating skill, and I don't see any rabbits being pulled out of any hats. I mean, it's kind of verged on that with the Abraham Accords. He brought some kind of concord to a region for a brief time that everybody thought was going to be the savior of the Middle East. That still hasn't happened. So none of this stuff has come to fruition. All of his promises are just, so far, words.
So the Energy Secretary Wright has warned that there's going to be, this is from Newsmax there, that the surge in oil prices, gas prices, is going to be happening until shipping resumes in the Straits of Hormuz. But Trump has said that it doesn't matter for us whether the shipping is open in the Strait of Hormuz. It only affects other people. Are you gone, Mark? Are you a done deal? All right, so I'll take over then. So Trump has said that it doesn't matter. Of course it does, because if you limit the supply, it doesn't matter if we directly get our supply from there. I mean, all you have to think is these countries want their oil, and if they can't get it from Iran, they have to get it from somewhere else. There's going to be less oil, more people trying to bid for it. Prices are going to get bid up, and we're going to be paying more at the pump. So I think that the Energy Secretary is right. I'm surprised that he would conflict with Trump, but then again, Trump conflicts with himself from minute to minute. So who the hell knows with this guy? There was the evidently from Axios also today. This talk about very briefly. Trump, the MAGA tent is shrinking. He's now has problems with the podcast nuts of, the Candace Owens, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson group. He has problems with the Catholics. He has problems with the anti-war types. So evidently Trump's coalition is shrinking. Not good for MAGA. I would say it's good for America, but I mean, the alternative that's likely to get in is the Democrats, and I would say that's not exactly a big win for the freedom folks, for the folks that like freedom. Anyway, so from Reason Magazine today, I found this very, very interesting. The regulatory state, the Federal Register says that there's 445 agencies with legal authority to publish regulations. Federal departments and commissions issued 3,853 rules in 2016. Evidently, the federal regulations' total compliance cost and economic effects are $2.153 trillion annually. And Mark is back. I think he's at his computer now.
So I got a phone call that came in, and suddenly I couldn't hear you. I couldn't reset anything. So Mark, on my computer, which is now working.
It was working all along. Okay,
No,
of course it was. Everybody that has a laptop understands that when you plug it into charge, it works. Okay,
it wasn't.
But anyways, we're talking about the article from Reason Magazine where they talked about $200 trillion in annual costs that go to federal regulations. The federal regulations call this. So, I mean, the article also says that we even when people try to reduce this stuff by, it's Trump tried to get rid of some regulations by executive order, but then they can just get reversed by executive order. So Congress ultimately needs to step up. But I don't think Congress cares. I don't think most people want less regulation. I mean, I think you would find people who would generically say, yes, less regulation. But much like with less spending, when it comes to particular things, they don't want it. That's my personal view. But is that insane to you that it's $200 trillion yearly spent on navigating the regulatory system? And paying the cost? $2 trillion. What did I say?
You said 200 trillion, which
$2 trillion. 200 trillion would be more.
I'm not surprised by it. I mean, I think there's even projections that it's as high as 3-point-something trillion. It's just a massive drain on the economic life of the private sector, and we don't even know, Michael, all the consequences of it. A lot of this are just guesses, but it's a lot of the seen and unseen. The Basquiat idea of the seen and unseen. What we don't see, the production that isn't engaged in, the jobs that aren't hired as a result, that have real costs down the road, not just this capital drain from the private sector to the public sector.
So I went I wanted to get a history of federal economic regulations. First of all, Lee says she loves whatever's wrong with us both, and never change. Evidently, you're dragging me down with you, Mark, because none of this has been my fault. Mark doesn't know how to work a phone. He doesn't understand that you plug a computer in and charge it and you can use it, and yet I'm being pulled in.
That's the way it works, Mike.
I guess so. You had a birthday recently. I don't know what impact that's had on you, but whatever.
Hey, I can't tell you the number of times that friends of mine dragged me into bar fights that I didn't want to get involved in. It wasn't me that did it.
Okay. Did you watch the rest of Something Bad Is About to
Yes,
Happen?
I did. It redeemed itself, but there is a serious narrative bump in there that both my wife, who is a genius with story, you don't have to believe me, she's amazing at it. She had the same exact issue that I did and had the same exact come to Jesus moment at the end. We thought it redeemed itself. But I thought overall it was a very well produced and directed and acted TV show.
What did you find it difficult to predict? That's because I did. Watching it, I could not.
No, I knew that. I knew that she was going to become the Watcher in the end. I knew that from probably once the Watcher reveals his spine, what he's all about. I figured that she was going to be the one to replace him at the end.
No. But did you? I'm talking about even.
But
way
it
before.
was an unpredictable story.
I'm talking about at the
in a lot of
beginning. Didn't you think that family was going to be the big problem?
Yeah.
When she went, yeah, that's what I thought. But it turns out no. Okay. We got to get back.
Tracy
it was a very unpredictable story in many ways.
That's Tracy's
which
saying.
Was nice.
Unpredictable story in many ways. So good.
Okay, so Tracy's the smart one out of the pair.
I told you that.
When?
Just now.
Because she's there.
She was in the other room. She couldn't hear me back then. She was over
back
there.
then. It was a minute ago.
Back there. She's in the other side of the wall.
All right. Okay, so we're going to get to the history of regulations.
Lee. First of all, I have to correct an error on Lee's part. She said I turned 85. I did not turn 85. Stop trying to kill me early. I still have 3 more years till I'm 85. Guys.
All right. So listen, it says a concise history of federal economic regulations, and I'm going to go through these. I'm not going to read everything, but because there's something that's very important that I want to address about this history of regulation. So it says the Gilded Age origins, the 1870s through 1900s, when the Interstate Commerce Act was passed, the Interstate Commerce Commission was put together, the Antitrust Act was passed, targeting,
but Michael,
monopolies.
Can you read a little bit further about what it said precisely the Interstate Commerce Commission was supposed to do? Because
it was supposed to curb railroad monopoly pricing. That was the original reason.
I think what I got from Rothbard's take on that, and you can tell me if I'm not remembering this correctly, was that the commission was originally organized because the railroads would build, they would have a trust, they would make a trust, and they would do that with the anticipation of controlling prices to keep them elevated. Somebody in the trust would inevitably break with the pack, lower prices, and try to make a profit to outdo the others in the trust. They couldn't stand that. They actually wanted to maintain monopoly prices, not deal with them. So they actually turned it over to the government with these guys as the head of the regulatory commission in order to try to keep everybody in line. So it was actually the opposite. It wasn't about, taking away monopoly. It was about investing.
I don't know.
It was about
investing. I don't trust Rothbard when it comes to history. Let me just put that out there.
It seems plausible to me, though.
It does. It seems knowing government. But anyway, so then we go on here to the Progressive Era, 1900 to 1920. Theodore Roosevelt was the big trust buster. The Federal Reserve Act was passed. The Clayton Antitrust Act and FTC Act were passed. And the FDA's roots trace to the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. The New Deal revolution in the 1930s.
Might I just say that Pure Food and Drug Act was inspired by Upton Sinclair's
The Jungle,
which was all bullshit.
It was a novel, right?
It was a novel.
Yeah,
it was a novel.
I'm reading the novel Shane, by the way. It's very good. Okay.
Wow.
Don't spoil it.
Great movie.
Okay. So anyway, the Glass-Steagall Act that separated commercial and investment banking, the Securities Act, the Securities Exchange Act, creating the Securities Exchange Commission, the Wagner Act, empowered labor unions, Social Security Act. The federal government asserted authority over agriculture, energy, communications, financial markets simultaneously. That says the post-war expansion.
By the way, Michael, not to interrupt, but I thought the Wagner Act was also, it strengthened unions and gave them legal leverage, but I thought it was also a way of taking power away from blacks who were migrating out of the South into urban centers. And I thought it was one way of, taking economic power away from them so they couldn't be hired.
Yeah. Why say not to interrupt when you interrupt? I don't know. I never understood that because that's a thing.
I'm trying to be polite.
Not to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt.
I'm trying to be polite.
Yes, Nikos recommended that I read Shane, and we are going to be doing an episode about it. But thanks for putting that out there, Akira, so that you ruined my big review.
By the way, Alan Ladd starred in Shane, right? He starred in. Did you see the movie Shane?
No, I'm reading the novel. I've never seen.
So you haven't
the
seen
movie.
the movie?
No,
Well,
don't spoil that either.
Alan Ladd was a very short man, and every time he had to do a scene with the woman whose name is escaping me now because I'm 82 years old, she had to be in a trench, walking beside him in a trench, so that they looked like they were the same height. I don't mean to take any of the steam out of Shane for you when you see it, because it's a great, great, great movie.
Okay. Anyway, then you had the post-war expansion from 45 to 70, the Employment Act of 46, the Bank Holding Companies Act of 56, more antitrust enforcement. You got the Great Society from 1964 through 75, a second major regulatory surge addressed consumer protection and externalities, Civil Rights Act, Clean Air Act, Consumer Product Safety Act, OSHA, and the EPA was created in 1970. Now, here's where I found this very, very interesting. So Claude says here that the deregulation era, 1978 through 2000, Carter and Reagan pursued systematic deregulation, Claude says. The Airline Deregulation Act of 78, the Trucking Deregulation of 1980, Depository Institutions Deregulation Act of 1980. And it says the Telecommunications Act of 96 restructured communication markets. And then we go on to the financial crisis of 08, Dodd-Frank. There was also Sarbanes-Oxley earlier on. It says that the Trump administration pursued aggressive deregulation via executive action and rollbacks of EPA and financial rules, but the Biden administration reversed course. So I then said, I put this question. You said, I'm typing this to Claude, that 78 through 2000 was an era of deregulation. Has there ever been a presidency that ended with less total economic regulation than it started with? The answer. That's a sharp question, and the honest answer is almost certainly no. Now, it just described this as aggressive, systematic deregulation. Now, obviously, Claude doesn't have a mind of its own. It's seeing this, for lack of a better word, as it goes and, looks through the records. So it says, at least not in the modern administrative state era. Even the most deregulatory presidencies, Reagan to a lesser extent, Clinton in both Trump terms, achieved net reductions in the rate of regulatory growth at best, not absolute reductions in the total regulatory burden. The point is this idea that there's deregulations. So I Like Numbers says deregulation started in the early 70s. No, it did not. What they did is they stopped the growth, which is like when they say they're cutting spending and they're stopping the growth. They're cutting the growth in spending. The reason to me this is vital, Mark, is you've read Free Market Revolution by Yaron Brook and Don Watkins, right?
Yeah.
Yaron cataloged all the regulations that took place in the banking sectors, over the last 30 years prior to the Great Recession. And all the arguments were like, look, this is what deregulation causes. When we allow the narrative to go that we are massively deregulating, and then things go wrong, they say, oh, look, it's because of all the deregulation.
Exactly.
We need more regulation. No,
Exactly.
There was not regulation. I Like Numbers says you got to start somewhere. In the 70s, dude. You just said it started in the 70s. It's more than 50 years since 1970. So they're not deregulating. Maybe Trump is issuing some executive orders now that have done a little bit. But ultimately, as long as we allow this narrative to go that there's this massive deregulation happening, when things go wrong, that's what gets pointed to.
Amen. Yeah, that's it. I couldn't say it any better. Greg Dougherty says there is an element of truth to the Democrat assertion that MAGA is fascist. It feels like we stepped into a time machine to 1930. Fascism versus communism are the only two items on the menu. I get that sense too, Michael, because largely because the commies have been the ones to have dictated the argument, and the argument that they claim is that capitalism is really state capitalism. It's really this idea that the state pulls for the guys with the money and the resources and the capital at the expense of the people at the bottom and exploit them, as opposed to capitalism being what it actually is, which is a system based on individual rights and property protection.
I Like Numbers says Brooke, meaning your own, is actually much more practical about cutting since Malay. There's an order to cutting programs and regs. Yeah. Is he saying don't cut and claim that you have? Because I don't think that's what he's saying.
Because Malay has cut. Malay is actually doing the things that the American presidents should be doing and finding a great deal of success with it. And of course, this is scaring the hell out of socialists, democratic socialists, commies, and fascists everywhere because he's being successful in Argentina. This should be a study for every politician in Washington right now. I think more importantly, for every voter, they should look to Malay and then hold the politicians in their district, their locality, their region, and nationally accountable to be like him if they want to save themselves.
I think I'm going to start calling I Like Numbers Johnny Strawman. Nobody said cut everything in one day without creating chaos. No, we've talked about that on this show, that you need to do things incrementally, whether it be privatizing the education system. What you said was deregulation started in the 70s. That's not true. On net, and there's not been a 4-year presidency where there was less at the end than at the beginning. So they're not cutting carefully because they're not cutting at all. So, Mark, there was also, I thought, a great article from the Daily Economy that I sent over you.
Yes.
This guy's going to make me lose my freaking mind. Do you not? I Like Numbers, seriously. Like, we have your previous thing. You say that's when the push for it started. But what you said was deregulation started in the early 70s. You didn't say they started pushing for it. You said it at the end of the quote, but the first thing you said was deregulation started. I mean, if you're going to like try to switch up from what you said, I mean, you should at least make sure it's not still up there or something. I don't know.
Yeah, Michael, before we get to that article that you want to get to, Akira Felix says, no objectivist has ever advocated for deregulating everything in a day. Yeah, that would be ridiculous, guys.
Yes.
Because we have 51% of the population dependent on government subsidies in some way or another. You cannot get rid of that in a day without causing serious economic crisis for a lot of people.
Right.
You have to wean people off of it, unfortunately.
All right. So the article in Daily Economy said that basically there's three ways that government funds itself: through taxes, through borrowing, through inflation. Do you want to
Keep going.
give a? What do you mean?
Keep going. I'm liking what you're saying.
No, I was going to have you break the three down. That's the thing. I gave you the three things the article said that government funds itself, and I was hoping you would.
Folks, there's an illusion out there that you can correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. No, don't give me that. You're turning into Persephone. There's this illusion out there that the government is just this this entity that is like it's like the goose that lays the golden egg. But it doesn't produce anything, guys. It doesn't produce anything. It either takes it from people in the form of taxes. It takes it from people in the form of inflation by producing currency, of course, which of course inflates the currency and reduces your capacity to spend, your purchasing power. It robs you of your savings. And what was the third one, Michael?
Inflation.
Which was inflation, which I just talked about. Yeah. It either taxes, borrows, or inflates the currency, folks. That's all it can do. It can do nothing else. Go ahead.
All right. So let me just save this photo here from Race. Great thumbnail once again from the great Race Jacobson, whom we appreciate ever so much over here. We don't give him enough credit, I think, but he is wonderful. Okay. So you look at taxation, and, you know, taxation is actually the hardest thing for the government to do because people don't like to get taxed, right? People can see taxes clear as day. So governments, I mean, they do tax, especially when they get to say tax the rich, as we're going to see when we get to Zohran Mamdani in a minute. But so what is happening?
Nothing. This my wife is talking in the other room.
Okay. So anyways, a very nice lady. I'm glad I finally got to meet her. We've only been friends for 3 years, and this is the first time but whatever. Okay. Now where the hell was I? Okay. Taxation is destructive, and people don't like to be taxed. They get to push it off and say, we're going to tax the rich, but that never works out because you're going to tax the rich. Then ultimately those people are going to have less money to invest. If there's less investment, there's less production, prices go up. So even if you're not paying the tax directly, you're paying it indirectly. So what they like to do is borrow. Why? Because people up front don't get to see the harm of borrowing because it's going to be, paid off by future generations. So people think that they can have their cake and eat it too. They can get the goodies, and the government will borrow and somebody else will pay for it. This also has its own problems, of course, of driving up interest rates, which is not a good thing. The government goes into debt, and then you end up having to service the debt. I think that the money paid to service the debt is like 17% of the budget or some outlandish number to service the debt. And then finally, of course, you have inflation where they get to print money. I think that we've added $5 trillion to the money supply or something like that since COVID. And of course, that just raises prices, screws us all, and creates malinvestments and economic dislocations. There's no really good way to fund the government, which means that we should be keeping it to a minimum because then it does the least, it takes the least amount of money. Now, I actually, did you read the article I sent you on the history of taxation in America? You did. Do you have it in front of you? Do you want to comment on it, or do you want me to continue to take the reins?
Let me call it up. now
Call
that
it
I
up.
have
What do you mean call it up?
now that I have my phone. Because originally I was on my phone, remember, so I couldn't pop it up. Yeah. So what would you like to talk about, Michael?
I just told you the history of taxation.
I have it. Which part of the history of taxation would you like to
The
talk about?
history of taxation. You start at the beginning. I'll do it.
Okay.
I'm so sad. I'm so sad.
So yeah, taxation has always been a part of the American landscape, Michael. But before it was instituted by constitutional amendment, it came when there were crises, right? They would institute an income tax to
well, there was taxation before
fund-
that, but
to
not
fund
no
the-
income tax.
right. But it was also like to fund a militia or to fund an emergency or some local project. But income tax actually came in a broad sense, from what I remember, during the Civil War.
Right.
Okay,
Lincoln.
so that's when there was a first broad income tax, but that was phased out over time.
It was found to be unconstitutional.
It's found to be unconstitutional, and then until, of course, they created an amendment to the Constitution, which empowered the government to collect income tax. Now, this was originally sold to the American population, if I remember, as a tax that would only be against, I think, 1 to 3% of the population, and the percentage of the income was going to be extremely low. Now, I think everybody can attest to the fact that it didn't stay in the upper 1% or 3% quadrant of income earners. It has spread universally to all of us. Anybody who makes money above the poverty line is paying taxes now, and oftentimes a considerable amount. He admitted that he remembered this. Yes, I did say I remembered the Civil War. So now, Michael, this thing that was billed as something that would only hit the richest percentage of the population, and only a small percentage of that income has now spread universally to all of us, and become a great burden, paying for one of the biggest governments doing stuff it shouldn't be doing.
Right. So at that point, 1% of the population paid the income tax, and the rate was 1% of net income. They later, Congress, net income, yes. Congress later added a 6% rate for incomes of more than $500,000. And of course, now the federal income tax maximum rate is like 37%. I think the minimum is 15%, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just make sure.
It could be right. It sounds about right. It changes.
Right. So it basically. Oh yeah. Okay. So right now, the rates are 15. You got 12%, 22%, 24%, 32%, and I believe 37% are the rates. So the bottom line is it's like with everything. Once you allow the government to start doing it, it never stays in bounds. It always goes more than what they said, and we're paying for it. And it's amazing to me, with such a tax burden, that they still don't have. They still have deficits. They still can't meet their funding. They still have to borrow to pay for it. They still have to increase the money supply. So we're getting screwed. We don't have capitalism. And this, of course, opens the gate for somebody like Mamdani, who we're going to get to in a minute. So go ahead, Mark, and give your final thoughts on the tax and regulatory burden that is screwing us, especially me with this tax bill I had to pay recently.
Not especially you, man. I'm telling you.
What do you mean, not especially me?
I'll tell you. I go when I work in Canada. They take 23% of my earnings off the top. That's then credited towards my federal income tax. But Michael, when I work in Canada, that's lots and lots and lots of money funding their system that I almost never benefit from. I mean, I certainly drive on the roads. I don't use their hospitals. I don't use any of their infrastructure that much. So somebody else is benefiting from all of that money. Capital that I could have used much more productively for my own life and my own circle. But so I do know what that's like, which is why I have business managers handle everything for me, because they destroy you.
Do you think that you're making the case that you are more burdened than I am when you talk about how you have business managers to take care of things for you?
Yes, I am more burdened than you. I am more
you pay more than me.
Yes, I do.
There's no doubt about that. Okay. So, but that's only because you're a billionaire. Anyway,
I'm not. But look, if the government were only protecting our rights and our property, it would be the police, the courts, and the army. That is it. That is not as sizable as a gigantic welfare state, folks. It's the welfare state that drives the debt. It's 3/4 of the debt, folks. You get rid of that, you take an enormous burden off of people, and all of that capital, trillions upon trillions of dollars, will then go to you. Not to the government, not wasted in the parasitic political class, but in the private sector where it belongs.
You know what I was just thinking of, and I don't generally like to defend capitalism along.
Wait a minute. Killer Thieves with Lawyers says Mark is that guy who tells the same story every time he sees you. That's not true, Killer Thieves and Lawyers. That's not true.
Would you like to tell Killers, Thieves, and Lawyers that to her face?
Yeah. Is that you?
Yes, that's
yes.
her.
But
I didn't know that. Why
yes, you did, because I told you that ages ago.
Don't expect me to remember that stuff.
Look, that's why he tells the same story, because he doesn't remember.
I don't tell the same story. It just so happens that you pinch some of the same shit out of me, but that doesn't mean I tell the same story every time I see somebody.
All right. Anyways, okay, Persephone. So look, I was thinking about the benefits of capitalism, right? And I was just thinking about a Mark Pellegrino movie. So you were in, what the hell's the name of the movie now? Big Lebowski. What was that, 97 or 98 that came out?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so you're in this movie, The Big Lebowski. So think about all the jobs that are created. And people can think about this in any field that you want. So The Big Lebowski employed countless actors, big, small, extras that have to go in there. You got the director, the producer, you got the video camera, all those people. But
gaffers, set decorators, builders, construction workers, the whole thing.
All that shit. Then you think about the movie theaters that it went to throughout the country. You're talking about ushers, the movie theater money, the tellers at the movie theaters, the people who work the concession stands at the movie theaters. All of those people are making money. That's when it's in the upper echelon of theaters. Then it goes to the when it's been out a while, it would go to the other theaters that they had back then, the smaller ones, and it would go through there. And so more people are making money. Then it goes to video. Right? So you got your Blockbuster Video plus your small chains. All those people are making money. They're employed by it. The people that are working at Blockbuster, the people that own Blockbuster, et cetera, et cetera. That is a lot of people to be...
Well, then, Michael, there's conventions, there's revival shows, and these conventions are big business now. This is a multi-billion-dollar business now out there. So right. That employs... If you go to one Comic-Con, Michael, and you've been to a few of these smaller venue Comic-Con.
I've been. What do you mean smaller venue?
Well, meaning they're not like if you go to San Diego Comic-Con or Dragon Con or one of these things where 200,000 to 1 million people are actually.
I was your companion. Yes.
You were my companion. Yeah, but if you go to places like that, you see thousands of people employed. You're talking about vendors. You're talking about ushers. You're talking about people who are cleaning the premises. Thousands of people, thousands.
I want to just tell you something. We have a cat fight going on here in the chat, and I'm just thinking if we're going to have cat fights, we should be charging extra for it. Jason Adams gives us 200, whatever these things are called. I forget again. He says, regulation dulls judgment. I brought a sealed, non-alcoholic Mai Tai mixer as a gift to my local bar when it started selling rum from our hometown distillery. Refused it over unclarity of the health code.
Unbelievable. Yeah, that figures. Go ahead.
Okay. So I also, in this, I'm leaving this. This is going to be all you right now. This is your big chance to shine. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
I sent you an article from Jacobin, which was a speech.
I am not going to read Jacobin.
What if I decided to do that in the morning?
I am not going to read Jacobin.
So you didn't read Mamdani's speech? You
sent me a Jacobin article for like 6 months. I read Jacobin, and I can't take it anymore.
Did you read Mamdani's speech or not?
Of course not.
They have teen Jacobin now too. So now, after having to pull the weight at the beginning because you couldn't access, having to pull the weight because I had to use the phone to do everything. Check crowns. Thank you, Jason Adams. That's what they are. They're check crowns. But now you're not even reading the stuff I'm saying.
I will not read Jacobin anymore.
All right. Anyways, they're talking about Mamdani using government to fight for the many, and they're evidently back more than 100 years ago. There was something called sewer socialists, and as far as I'm concerned, they can all go to the sewer, but for fixing the sewers. But Mamdani gives this speech, and it's basically what you would expect from a socialist, right? You're going to have more grocery stores. We're going to speed up the buses. Everybody's going to have education. He's talking about how wonderful things are going 100 days in, as if that, crime is down. Everything is going swimmingly. But there was one line in here that I really wanted to get your take on. And so that's what I'm going to have to find now. So if you want to tell them a story, maybe
I think I saw a post somewhere, Michael, on X. You might be able to confirm it, where they've found that the grocery stores that he wants to put up, the public grocery stores, government, state-run grocery stores, are going to cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million per store. And it's going to take somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 years to put them up. So let's expect that price tag to grow exponentially. So they won't be up for this generation. They'll be up sometime in the next generation for some other poor slob to reap the repercussions of this horrible idea. And let's say the second they get stocked, Michael, those shelves are going to go empty. And the stores are going to be decrepit, probably centers for crack and drug addicts all over the city. That's what I project. But I think by the time they get these things up, we're probably going to be talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. I think they posted something recently, Michael, that the train to nowhere that we've been building in California for the past 2 decades was projected to be $30 billion. It's now $130 billion. And they've just sent people around the moon for a fraction of that cost. Thank you, private enterprise. Thank you, capitalism. And thank you, SpaceX, for making NASA relevant again. Go ahead, Michael.
He says that this is a great quote. You can comment on this until I find the quote that I'm actually looking for. When socialists make promises, we go after it and get it.
Yeah, they go after it all right. They go after it to the ruination of whole cultures and societies. And if you don't believe me, just, I don't know, go to the former Soviet Union, go to China, go to Venezuela, for crying out loud.
Well, Venezuela is now our big partner.
Our big partner. Yeah, they're our ally.
All right, I got to find this. So you have to keep talking, Mark. You're an actor. Tell them about your acting experience.
Seems like my acting experience.
Yeah.
So Persephone's talking to Akira. What is that? So much worse than you think it is. They had a garbage article. Oh, so I guess they're talking. There's a thing going on in the discussion where they're talking about Teen Jacobin. Now that's frightening, Michael. Jacobin is a scary, scary magazine. Adults shouldn't read it, let alone children. It should come with a warning label on it. That reading this magazine too much can cause permanent and irreversible brain damage.
Permanent and irreversible brain damage. I got to find this quote, man, because I could just repeat it.
Yeah,
repeat.
That's
I want to find
give me
the
overview.
quote. No, I don't want to give you the overview. He's talking about the cynics. He doesn't like the cynics.
The cynics, otherwise known as people who are actually looking at reality and seeing the big socialism fail for what it is.
Yes.
If you only believed that socialism would work, then it would. You know what that reminds me of? There's a Richard Bach book called Illusions. Did you ever read Illusions?
No, I did not. What's it about?
Well, it's about this very thing. It's about the primacy of consciousness. The Messiah in Illusions understands the nature of reality sort of the way Neo did. Neo could see the Matrix, right? Well, this Messiah can see things as they are too. And so he's not limited by our by what we would consider actual perceptions. We see a solid wall. We, don't try to bash our head into it because we understand its nature. But that's just limiting ourselves, Michael. If we really believed that that wall was liquid, we could push our fingers through it. And that's sort of the way the socialists are. If they really believe hard enough that they can centrally control an economy and that they could accurately guess everybody's wants and provide for those wants, and everybody was communal enough to, put their money into this pot that would then be distributed to those who needed it, then socialism would work.
I found it. He's talking about this mayor of Milwaukee when they had this sewer socialism. I said socialism. I'm thinking of socialist assholes, and I kind of just combine them. But anyway, he says this guy believed, just as we do, that to deliver this great society, we should tax the rich. Go, Mark. Break it down. Talk now.
Yeah, tax the rich, which is what this is, I think, almost everything Mamdani says is hinged upon the idea that they are going to tax the rich, which of course goes over well with everybody now in the age of envy, Michael. They want to bring everybody down. They don't want anybody rising to the top. Well, unfortunately for New York, this is a very bad idea because so far this has ended in a massive wealth exodus because the rich aren't going to stay there to be taxed, Michael, even if they voted for this guy because it seemed good on paper. The fact that he actually wants to do it is another thing. And because this wealth tax is going to be sending capital elsewhere, guess who is going to have to actually pay the tax, Michael?
You.
The poor middle class people who actually voted for Mamdani and thought they were going to get a break. They thought they were going to get something for free. It turns out the vast majority of this tax is probably going to fall on their heads, as it always does.
Yeah, Mamdani sucks. I'm actually going to a debate at Soho Forum in less than a couple weeks now. Less than a couple weeks. And the issue is going to be whether Mamdani basically is doing a good job. All right, so yesterday I asked the audience what they had to be optimistic about. And we got from Jenna Kleem, I am most optimistic about the haunting I will do after I die. Cool.
That's pretty good.
Akira says, despite all my disagreements with objectivists, the objectivist movement has given me a lot of optimism. I think if freedom is ever going to be achieved, it will be because objectivism became mainstream. I've learned a lot from libertarians, and I think if other objectivists gave some libertarians the time of day, the movement would grow exponentially and the world would be a better place. They can start with just one article. Unicorn governance is great for that. I agree. Great article. Bonnie Bertrand, Jim Valiant said that I was right about Trump and the war in Iran, and Bonnie Bertrand didn't like that. She says the implication of Mike was right that Trump would mess up with the war with Iran is that those who were for ending the regime, even if it had to be with Trump in charge, were not willing to admit that possibility, that we were naive, but everyone sane knew that Trump would screw up somewhere, somehow. Okay, if you knew he was going to screw it up, why be for it? But then she explains, people who stood with Israel and not seeing the need to end the regime now knew all along that the possibility of Trump doing the wrong thing was very real, but the alternative, waiting while the death to America Ayatollah-led regime and its proxies grew even stronger, was unthinkable. Trump will continue to screw up, but the black cloud that was Khomeini is gone, thanks to Israel's air power and CIA intelligence. Okay, so she was upset.
Unfortunately, Michael, we don't know what's going to replace the black cloud of Khomeini.
We do. It was Khomeini.
Well, he's not. You mean his son?
Yeah, no, I'm teasing. Okay,
but I mean, we don't know what's going to come in the wake of these guys. It could be conceivably.
No, we know that it was an unconstitutional war, and we know there's a lot of other bad things going on. But you go ahead, Mark, and give us the capitalist thought of the day.
Well, guys, if you're sick of this,
oh wait, hold on, because Jim just reminded me I was supposed to ask you this before. Are you here all week?
No.
What days are you off?
Friday.
You're not going to be here Friday?
No, I'll be here Friday.
Okay, so you're not here tomorrow?
Correct.
Or Thursday?
Correct.
Jim Valiant, tomorrow or Thursday, do you want to come on and discuss your article on immigration? Let me know. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, guys, if you're sick of this $37 trillion debt, if you're sick of the parasitic political class, if you're sick of being guilted all the time by this parasitic political class into ceding more power to them, look, it's time to stop. Get off this train. You don't have to stay on it. You can vote for an alternative like the American Capitalist Party, the one principled party out there in the world, I think, that stands for individual rights and property and inviolable property. The two principles that hold civilization together and make society benevolent. So let's start working towards that goal. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Please share it liberally across social media platforms. These ideas need to get out there in the world, and they need to take over from the altruist miasma that's out there. We need to drain the swamp, man, the mental swamp, the philosophical swamp, and fill it up with some good, wholesome, nutritious philosophy, folks. Go ahead.
Awesome. And it's official. Jim Valiant will be here Thursday to discuss his article on immigration. I'm looking forward to discussing it with him. My question for the audience, and please go to YouTube and check this out. Also, by the way, today, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Everyday Ethics with Persephone and me. And also, I got a great interview out right now in The Rational Egoist with a young objectivist, Liam State, and I highly recommend it.
I saw a piece of that. It looks good.
Yeah, he's great. That kid's really got a very bright future. Okay, so the question is, and make it realistic, who's a guest you would like to see on this show that's relevant to the topics that we discuss? But please make it realistic. Do not say you want me to get Javier Milei, because that's not happening. All right, that's it. Mark, take us out.
If anybody could get Milei, it would be you. All right, folks. All right. We're going to be here again, same bat time, same bat channel, at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. Here in Europe, it's 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. So remember, you got 23 hours now to sit down and think about what's good and what's right. That means you're going to have to check your premises, folks. So don't forget to do that. Check your premises. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.